In the last video, we set up a event listener on the server, listening for that join event, and we did some validation. This at least makes sure we have the name and the room name, both of which are going to be required. The real next step is to actually use the Socket.io library to join rooms. And this is not going to let us just join rooms, but it's also going to give us a different set of methods. We can choose to emit to everybody connected to the server or just to people in specific rooms. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing. We want to emit chat messages just to other people who are also in the room. Now, in order to join, what you do is you call socket.join. Socket.join takes a string, the name, and we have that name. It's available under params.room, just like we used right here. And that is it. We now have a special place for people to talk who are in the same room. Now, this is a string, so it would be something like the office fans or anything else, and you have to join by the string value. Right here, though, params.room will get the job done. Now, you can also choose to leave a room using socket.leave, socket.leave, leaving a room by its name, the office fans, for example. This is going to kick you out of that group, and you're not going to get those private messages, the messages sent specifically to the group. Now, the next step in the process is to figure out how to actually take advantage of this. Adding a user to the room is great, but if we can't target them specifically and others in that room, it's not very useful. Well, it turns out we have a couple ways to do just that. In order to illustrate how we're going to target specific users, let's look at all the ways we've emitted events on the server. We've used io.emit. This emits it to every single connected user, and that's currently what we're doing for things like create message. A new message comes in, and we emit it to everyone connected. Next up, we have used socket.broadcast.emit. We use that right here, and as we know, this sends the message to everyone connected to the Socket server except for the current user. The last one we used inside of server.js is socket.emit. We used it right here. This emits an event specifically to one user. Now, we can take these events and we can convert them over to their room counterpart. In order to send to a specific room, we're going to be chaining on the to method. This is going to look a little something like this. Let's say we want to emit an event to every single person connected to a room. And let's just call this room the office fans for the moment. To do that, we're going to call io.to. .to is a method, and it takes the room name exactly as it was provided in the call to join. In our case, that is going to be the office fans, just like this. And then we would chain on a call to emit. This is going to send an event to everybody connected to a room, the office fans. Now, we can also do the same thing with broadcast, meaning that we want to send an event to everybody in a room except for the current user. In order to do that, we would use the following. Socket.broadcast.to. And this works just like the to method defined above. The office fans would get passed in, and on here we would call emit. This is going to send an event to everybody in the office fans room except for the current user, the one who's actually calling socket.broadcast. Now, the last way we've used emit is socket.emit. We're still going to use that when we want to send something to a specific user. There is no reason to target them by room since we just want to target them. This is the two ways we're going to emit to specific rooms. Now, in order to actually start wiring some of that up, what we can do is take these two calls up above and we can move them down inside of join, meaning that we're not going to tell someone that someone joined a room until they've actually joined the room by calling join. We're also not going to tell a user that they have joined a room until the call has actually gone through. It might not go through if the data like the name or the room name are invalid. Let's take both of these calls and cut them out, and we're just going to take them as they are and we're going to move them down into join. For the moment, we can move them down below our comments. I'm going to leave the comments in place so you have these as a reference down the line. Now, right here, we call socket.emit and we emit a new message. Welcome to the chat app. And this line, it is actually going to stay the same. We still just want to target the specific user. The next one is going to change though. Instead of broadcasting to every connected user, we're going to broadcast to just users inside of the room we just joined right here using socket.broadcast.to, passing in params.room. We're going to emit a new message, and this is going to let everyone know that a new user has joined. Instead of new user, we can actually specify the name. We have access to that. Right here, I'm going to use a template string, injecting the name first, params, .name, followed by has joined. Perfect. Now that we have this in place, we can actually test things out. What we're going to do is join a room. Then we're going to have a second user join, and we should see the message right here. Their name has joined. We're also going to add a third user into the mix to make sure it's actually sending the message to just one room. Over inside of the browser, let's get started by creating a user called user1. This user is going to join a room called uppercase A. Now we're going to go ahead and create a second user by going to localhost 3000. This one can be called user2, and we're going to join room B just like this. And if I go between room A and room B, you can see that no join message printed because we haven't joined the same room. We're on completely separate rooms, so we should not be getting those messages. Next up, we're going to add a third user. This user is also going to join room A. User3, room name, room A, and we are going to hit join. Now, when we hit join, we can go through the tabs and see what data we get back. Here we get welcome to the chat app as expected. This is only happening because we've successfully joined the room. Then in the second tab, we get welcome to the chat app 2. There is no message greeting that other user because the other user joined room A. And the first tab has our user3 has joined message. And this is fantastic. Both users are in the room A, so this user should get a message when a new user joins. And we've injected the name right here as expected. Now, things were relatively easy for our join event listener because we had access to both the name variable and the room variable. They were actually passed in as arguments. It's going to be a lot more difficult for create message and create location message. We're going to need to figure out a way to get the room back for the given socket so we can emit to just that room. We also need to set up that people list on the left-hand sidebar. We're going to need to figure out how to use that IO object to get a list of all the people by room name. All of that is going to be super important because currently the messages we emit, some message, for example, they're going to show up to all users regardless of what room they're in. To get this working, to get those private rooms in place, we'll be persisting that data. It's coming up next, so stay tuned. I will see you then.